Hey everybody, welcome back to Alabama Care. Today we have Miss Jane Duer and her son Brent. November is National Adoption Month and they have a wonderful story to tell. Jane and Brent, would you like to introduce yourselves?
Sure. I'm Jane Duer. I'm Brent's mom.
I'm Brent Duer.
Well, I'm so glad y'all are here. It's good to see you again, Jane, and it's nice to finally meet you, Brent. So I'm going to be checking down at my phone. If any of the viewers have questions or anything, I can pass those over to y'all. So I hope y'all had a good Thanksgiving. Are y'all have y'all decorated for Christmas yet?
We're getting there.
Yeah. We live in two separate places, actually. He has his own apartment. So I've decorated here at the condo, and I think he's working on his apartment. So
main thing I'm trying to do is keep the cat off the tree.
Yeah, this is his first year with a cat.
Do y'all like live Christmas trees or artificial ones?
I'm more of a fake type.
We have artificial ones, but I do like real ones. We've gone back and forth, but the last 2 years we've had an artificial. What about you?
Gotcha. Yeah, we did artificial like before our kids were born, and then the last 2 years we've done real ones. Like I've tried to take it back to like when I was a kid, and I'm trying to do the same thing for my kids. But I love the smell of a real one.
Yeah, I have wax melting that smells like balsam fir, so that I get the hot wax pots, so that I have the smell.
Yeah. The wax melts. I had a candle one year that smelled just like a real tree. I think I found it at like Hobby Lobby or somewhere, but you can't beat that real tree smell.
You can't. No. It's wonderful.
So Jane, can you talk to us about your journey to adopting and then just like the backstory of how you met Brent?
Absolutely. Told it for many years. It's a miracle story in so many ways, and
I came out real stubborn when she first met me, but
we'll get there. You weren't stubborn when I first met you. You became stubborn.
Yes.
So my husband Chuck and I got married in 1990. I guess we better start there. Married to Chuck, and I started working at Children's Hospital in 1991, and that's important because that will lead me to Brent. So while that's not part of one's workplace is not often the adoption story, but it is in my case. So I worked there part-time in 1991 on a contract as an early intervention provider, working with birth to 3 children with disabilities. And then in 1992, I was hired full-time as a child life teacher. And one of my main responsibilities as a child life teacher for the birth to 5 population was working in the long-term ventilator dependent area of the hospital. It was called the pulmonary care unit. And I would get consult requests from the physicians when a baby or toddler or preschooler was put on a vent and was on that long-term care unit. I would be called in to do a developmental evaluation and start working with the child on developmental milestones while they were on a ventilator. And so that is how I met Brent. And I'll get to that in a minute. But back to my husband and I, we wanted to start a family 3 years after we got married. So 1993, we started trying to get pregnant and we're not able to, and went through infertility treatment for a few months. And then just came to the conclusion that we really truly felt that God was leading us to adoption. We couldn't get pregnant, and we had always wanted to adopt anyway. We wanted to have a biological child and an adopted child if God blessed us with a biological child. But we were open to adoption from the beginning of our marriage. We talked about it when we were engaged. So we made the decision to stop trying to get pregnant with fertility treatment and started the process to become adoptive parents. And that was in 1994. And we went through the training that you have to do to be foster parents and adoptive parents. We were had our home study and were approved in early 1995. And we were just waiting for a newborn baby to be placed with us. And then I met Brent. He was actually born in August 2nd of 1992, and he was 36 weeks gestation, and he weighed a little under 5 pounds. He had premature lungs, and after being home with his biological parents for 11 days, he was hospitalized for breathing problems, and he would be put on a ventilator at that point, which he remained on for about 18 months. And he was hospitalized for 2 years. His birth mother was just 19 when she had Brent, and she already had a 4-year-old son and a 2-year-old daughter who also had special needs. The daughter did. So she had very little support from her family, according to her, and at the time, and she and her children's father was heading for divorce at the time. So back to me and my job, and I came in to do a developmental consult on Brent when he was 12 months old. So he'd been at the hospital, at Children's Hospital, for a year, but I didn't work with the ones in the intensive care unit, so I hadn't met him yet. And he had been in a drug-induced coma, sedation for most of that first year to keep him from, he would stop breathing. They said they would keep the crash cart by his incubator because he would crash and have to be resuscitated. Or as he used to call it, he was, what'd you call it?
Resurrected.
He said he was resurrected. He was resuscitated. So he lost oxygen to the brain as a very young infant, the oxygen deprivation due to the cessation of breathing. So he had a lot of reactive airway disease and respiratory failure, and long-term mechanical ventilation led to bronchopulmonary dysplasia, or BPD, scarring of the lungs. When I evaluated him at 12 months, he was at a developmental level of a newborn because he had been sedated for a year. So he hadn't had those 12 months of milestones, really. As his child life teacher, I saw him 5 days a week for about an hour, and worked with him as well as with the others on the developmental team, the PT and the OT and the speech therapist. We all worked on skills with him, such as using sign language and sitting up and crawling, feeding himself, and eventually walking. And I didn't really know anything about his family, his birth family. I never saw them at the hospital. I didn't really understand why they weren't there. He was in a long-term unit. It's not like at that time in the 90s, parents didn't stay with their children in a long-term, in that kind of unit. They did in the room if they were just in a room, but not at that time in this particular unit. I think they can now. But I knew he had family that cared about him because there was a picture of his brother and sister in his crib. And so I knew there was family. I just didn't really understand their backstory. And so I brought Brent's situation to the attention of my ladies' Bible study. Of course, no names were used or specifics about him. I just said, I have a patient at Children's that his parents don't visit him, and he's been very sick, but he's making a lot of improvements. And I'd just like to start praying about him and maybe do some things for his mother and his siblings to, let them know somebody's out there and care about him. And so we collected money and got her a gift card for the grocery store, and we collected clothing for his brother and sister and for him. And I sent her a Mother's Day card that year in 1995. Fast forward I was working with her, trying to help her to I asked her things like, well, if you had childcare, could you come visit Brent? For your other 2 children, could you come visit Brent more? Or what are some things that would help you be able to visit? And she said that it was, childcare and money for her car, gas. And so I arranged for all that and was scheduling her first visit with him where the children would come. And I had somebody scheduled to watch them in the lobby of the hospital while she visited with Brent. And she called me to confirm everything. And in that phone conversation, she asked me if I had children myself. And I, was kind of, no, we're hoping to adopt soon. And I was ready to move on to the next thing, right? And she said, well, I've thought about giving Brent up for adoption. Would you consider taking him? Well, of course, I was blown away. I thought, oh, this can't be real. She can't be, somebody doesn't just ask
I'm not real. I'm just an illusion.
And so I told her that, I said, do you mean that? And she said, yes. And so we talked a little bit more, and then we agreed to meet the next week This was like the middle of the week. And I said, well, you talk to your husband and let's talk to Brent's social worker at the hospital. And I'll talk to my husband and we'll see if this is something we want to pursue. And then we'll meet on Monday. Well, I talked to my husband and I'd already told him about Brent, again, with no specifics and stuff. Just there's this little boy there. And he was willing to explore it, to move forward with it, kind of sight unseen. And I said, well, I don't even know if he'll be able to go home with us. He's been in the hospital for 2 years. I don't know if he's ready to be discharged, if he had a family that could, take care of him or what. And he wasn't on the ventilator at this point. He was just on oxygen. But at any rate, we met on Monday and we moved forward. And within 2 weeks, we had temporary custody of him. And by August, that was June, the end of June, that we got custody. Middle of June, we got custody. The end of June, we took him home after learning all about his medical care and such. And then August 9th, we adopted him. So within 2 months of her asking me to adopt him, we had a final adoption because it was crazy. The judge said he had never presided over an adoption case that fast. So that was his adoption story. And I'll let you ask any other questions.
Meant to be.
It was.
That's the sweetest story. So, talking about like his mom, like his birth mom wasn't able to visit with him and stuff. I remember my daughter Charlie. I think you know a little bit about her, but she spent a lot of the first 2 years of her life. I mean, she didn't spend 2 years in the hospital, but she was in and out of the hospital a lot.
Right.
And I remember, like when I would walk past rooms and I would see little babies in there on their own, I would just want to go in there and grab them. I obviously did not do that, but I felt so bad for them. And
I understand.
But it was easy to judge. But now that I have 2 kids, I understand now. I understand a lot better because Tim has been with Charlie at the hospital without me and vice versa. So I feel bad about, judging. So I get it.
You don't know their stories. You don't know and that was the thing. Yeah.
And you know that they want to be there and they can't.
Of course. Yeah. Yeah. And they didn't live close by. I mean, they were in the outskirts of Birmingham. They weren't in Birmingham where the hospital was. So, gas money and childcare. And I mean, they just could not feasibly be there every day. And Brent's sister has developmental disabilities also and medical problems. So even if she'd had been typically developing, it would have been hard. But having another child with special needs, you couldn't just leave with anybody, just anybody. So it was very hard on her. But she loved Brent, and she says that she's thankful for me and thanks God for me and my husband because we helped her give Samantha and her daughter and Cody, but specifically Samantha because Samantha had the special needs too. Brent and Samantha had the best life they could have with this option. Whereas had she not given him to us or we not been available to take him, it would have been a real struggle for her to give both those children what they needed. So you just never know how God is working, in the background to, I just thought we were adopting Brent. I never thought about the fact that it was giving Samantha, a better chance. So.
Right. Yeah. Like y'all both were such a blessing to each other. Like so cool.
Yeah. It was orchestrated by God fully, we believe.
Right. Yes. So with Brent's health condition, I love that it didn't scare you away. I guess in the environment that you worked in, it wasn't a big deal. You wanted him to come home with you.
Well, I will say I was better prepared than a lot of people would for sure, because I'd worked in the pulmonary unit for 2 years and I was not, the medical stuff didn't scare me or anything. That they were very frank with us. It was one thing being there 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 versus taking home a child and being responsible for them 24/7. They told us that he could die in his sleep because of he could just quit breathing. And that, they weren't sure if he would live to be 5. He was actually,
bring it on.
He was actually almost 3 when we adopted him. So he turned 3 August 2nd, and the adoption was final on August 9th. So he was 3 basically. But it was scary even with somebody that had the experience, but we felt like God prepared us. And looking back, in hindsight, my husband says he thinks the Holy Spirit blinded us to the what ifs and what could be's and just gave us the vision right in front of us. So,
I love
and,
that.
and
I love
he's
that.
healthy. I mean, the doctors told us he could have asthma his whole life. Best case scenario was that he would have severe chronic asthma, and he never has. He didn't even have to do inhalers or anything. After age 7, the pulmonary team said, "We don't need to see you anymore. You're out of here." So he has been healthy. He never missed school. All through school, he never missed school due to illness. I think he missed one time with strep throat, but it had nothing to do with his respiratory system. So, he's been very healthy. Of course, the lack of oxygen did cause some brain development to not go as planned, right? It's because of that. And plus being in a hospital for 2 years, the environment was not, in a home with the same caregivers taking care of a child. So he does have some developmental disabilities due to that. And he's very aware of his intellectual disability and some of his struggles, right, kiddo? Yeah.
So he was in the hospital consistently for 2 years?
He went home
on and off, basically.
Well, mostly on. His first hospitalization was 11 days after birth. Or, he stayed in the hospital for a little while because he was premature, but not a long, long time. And then he was hospitalized at 11 days old, or 11 days after being discharged from the hospital the first time. And then he was in the hospital for probably a year, maybe. He went home twice, once on the ventilator with his biological family, and then once on oxygen with his biological family, but he was only home for a week or 2 at a time, both of those times. So of 2 years, he was home maybe 4 weeks total.
Okay, yeah.
So 4 or 5 weeks.
Yeah. So
6 weeks at maximum.
He has no memory of any of that, of course. So the hospital was his home.
I didn't want to have to go right here, just torture the nurses again.
So when you first told your husband, was he excited? What was his reaction?
No, he was depressed.
He was not depressed. I told you he's got a sense of humor, Hannah. I don't remember his exact words, but my boss at the time, the office that I went into to use the phone was outside of my boss's office. And so she heard me say, "Hey, Chuck, are you ready to be a father?" And she said, "I don't know what she said, "I don't know what your husband said, but he must have said when, because your next words were like now." So, here's the thing. Another thing about how we feel like God was so involved in this, Chuck is more skeptical of things and more, let's weigh all the options. Let's really not jump into anything, and I'm the one that's usually, she wants to give him to us. Let's go, but he was for it. He was like, "Well, sure." He said, "Yeah, let's do it." And then we talked about it, for like 4 or 5 days before I met with her again. And he was all for it. Some of our family was a little bit nervous because they didn't know him, and they worried that we were taking on more than we could handle, and what would his future be, and would he die, and would we be dealing with a lifelong, physical and mental disability and all these things. And so, but really we had faith that it was what we were called to do. We just really felt like he was ours. And you see the resemblance.
No.
Except for the beard.
Yeah, that's what I was going to
say. Now, what's funny is this. When Mom and Dad were talking about the whole adoption thing, they were in college. Correct. Y'all
Dad was in graduate school. I was working. I wasn't in college.
Well, Mimi had to raise me.
Dad was in graduate school.
Oh, okay. Good.
She didn't raise you. My mother-in-law was a nurse, and she worked at a hospital, and she was able to adjust her schedule because he couldn't go to daycare because of his medical condition.
Yeah, screw daycare. I don't think I would have gotten along with the little kids either.
And so for the first year, and I was just opening the early intervention program at Children's. I was shifting from working inpatient to an outpatient program. And so I couldn't reduce my hours at work. So his grandmother, my mother-in-law, came as a nurse. She was not intimidated by his oxygen and his medical needs. And she stayed with him when my husband was in school, was having to go to classes. And then my husband worked at nights when I was at home. So there were three of us that raised him, basically, my mother-in-law, my husband, and me for the first few years. So.
Oh, that's sweet. So how long was he on oxygen? Do you remember being on oxygen, Brent?
I remember, let's see, what was it? About 5-7 years, I think, on the oxygen. I just remember carrying a big oxygen tank around.
Yeah, you didn't carry it, though.
Yeah.
We pulled it, or the teacher
Whatever.
pulled it.
Whatever.
You had it in your nose, though.
Whatever.
You may remember pictures as much as anything. He was on it 24/7 for the first 2 years. So he took it with him.
I was way off. I was thinking 7 years.
Well, you were 7 before you got rid of it completely.
Right.
Yeah. You weren't way off because you were 3 when you came home with us. So for age 3 and 4, you had it 24/7. And then around kindergarten, I think he still had to take it to kindergarten during the day, but I think we were weaning him off in kindergarten. So by the time he was in first grade, maybe he was off of it completely. But he went to preschool special ed. You mentioned wanting me to talk a little bit about Linda Nolan Learning Center. So this might be a good place to. He was 3 when we got him, and being an early childhood special educator, I wanted him to receive preschool special ed services since I knew he qualified. So we referred him, and he could have gone to preschool special ed classes, but because of his medical condition, the doctor didn't release him to go to a classroom every day. So he went for speech therapy only. So
and that's when my antisocial kicked in.
No, it's not. You're not antisocial.
You don't seem antisocial a bit.
No, he's not. He's very outgoing. When he was 3, he just went. My husband took him for speech therapy a couple or 3 times a week, and at the Linda Nolan Learning Center. And then when he turned 4, he was healthy enough to go to the preschool class, and so he actually got to go. I think every day. It's been a long time ago. I think he went every day to Linda Nolan in Pelham.
Okay. Yeah, I've been curious about the Linda Nolan Center because some appointment Charlie went on, it wasn't her regular eye doctor, but it was like some kind of eye specialist. And she mentioned it, and she gave me like a big printout on it, and I was like, oh my gosh, this place sounds awesome. And so I was just kind of curious, like what you remembered about it. And I don't even know that Charlie.
Of course, it's been 20-something years. Yeah, I don't even know now if that's, Linda Nolan would be do you live in Shelby County?
No, we're in Chilton. So we probably couldn't even go to it.
I don't know. I don't know how that works, but Chilton should have preschool special ed services for Charlie. Or Charlie's 5 now, right? Is she 5? Is she in kindergarten? So she's in kindergarten now, right? Yeah.
Well, she was supposed to start kindergarten, and then when COVID hit, we kind of backed off. So now she's homebound. And now that she's eligible to get a vaccine, she hasn't gotten one yet, but all of her doctors strongly recommend for her to be vaccinated. Yeah. And so we're thinking about possibly maybe trying in the spring. It just kind of depends, but hopefully for sure she'll get back into school next year.
She'll love it. Yeah, that'll be so good for her. Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I was just because like when you're early like on this journey, which we're not super early, we're 5 years into it. But when you hear about stuff like because we're in a small town too, so and when you hear about places like the Linda Nolan Center, it's like wow, I didn't even know places like this existed. So it's pretty exciting. Yeah. So I haven't met anybody that's been there. I just recently met like somebody who knows a lot about the music program there, but I haven't got to talk to like a student. Do you remember going there, Brent?
Preschool? No, I bet.
Yeah, you may not.
Brent's 29 now, just in case people wonder. He's 29, so
Uh-huh.
preschool was a long time ago.
Yeah.
I have pictures of him in the Christmas musical, though. They did a Christmas performance at Linda Nolan, and he was 4, and I have pictures of that. So,
Yeah.
You see what I'm having to deal with here?
So what did the developmental delays look like? And you mentioned even now, like I don't pick up on anything. So I'm just curious, like growing up,
you want to tell
what
some
did
of the
that
things you struggled with in school? What were some of the things you struggled with in school because of your disability?
Oh yeah, extra time for homework. Basically, I had a hard time. Oh
What was
boy,
that?
that was little kids making ruckus in the kitchen.
yeah. Yeah, a 2-year-old. She dropped a metal bowl.
Okay.
Little monsters, you gotta love them. You know,
Yeah.
He had an IEP from the beginning. When he first in preschool, he qualified under other health impaired because of his severe medical issues. And then when he was reevaluated, he qualified under ADHD, but that I believe is not even something that is an eligibility now for special ed ADHD.
I just got lucky with that.
And then well, it was at the time it was still allowed.
Yeah.
And then I don't remember the other reasons, but he had trouble with tests. He has a lot of anxiety around tests, and he has trouble retaining information. You had trouble memorizing things for tests and for work, and homework was hard.
Yeah.
And so he has his official diagnosis is borderline intellectual disability.
In other words, I have a limit of how much I can what's the word I'm looking for? Understand. I got a limit. You cross that limit, you get a headache.
But he will astound me sometimes with things that he knows that I don't. He came up on Thanksgiving. My sister and I were in the car trying to, and we won't give details of the story.
I don't mind if you do that.
No.
Right.
But we were trying to come up with a word, and the word was redemption or redeemable. And he came up. We were going, oh, what's the word? It starts with an R. And Brent said redemption, and I said, yeah, that's exactly it. So out of the context of our conversation, my sisters and he came up with that word, and I mean he's amazing. He learned to drive when he was 19. He got his driver's license at 19. He earned a black belt in karate at 18, or taekwondo. He got his black belt in taekwondo at 18. It took him about 4 years, but he got it. He's worked ever since he got out of high school. He's had a job, part-time job. He gets disability income, so he can't work full-time, but and he doesn't want to work full-time. It stresses him out to work full-time. So he works part-time. You want to tell a little bit about you want to talk a little bit about your job right now? Just where you work, what you
do? Well, what do you want to know about it?
Well, let's see. What does your day-to-day life look like? You said you have a job. What do you do?
I work at Hickory Tavern up in Brookwood. Pretty much as the head dishwasher.
Oh, yeah.
He's been there for over 3 years, almost 4 years.
4 or 5 years, somewhere around there, yeah.
Do you enjoy it?
Yeah, so. It depends on the day.
He likes his coworkers. I think they have fun sometimes. They treat him really well. His boss treats him really well, his manager, and he understands Brent's strengths and his limitations, and gives him free food when he works longer than he's supposed to, and so.
Yeah. Hey, that sounds good. So you live on your own, right, Brent?
Yes and no. Yeah. Well,
you live on your own. The cat doesn't support you.
Still, I thought I was thinking people watch.
So you have a cat? You have a roommate?
Yeah.
What's your cat's name?
Zeus.
Ah,
He's
cool name.
A Bengal, black and white cat.
He sounds pretty. So what?
He's been trying to eat the Christmas tree lately.
Yeah, we don't have any cats, but I heard that cats like to climb in Christmas trees and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Cats, they're fun, but they have their turd moments.
That's funny. So what about like other jobs you've had, previous jobs? Jane, you said he was how old when he got his first job?
He was 18 or 19. He was a senior in high school. He worked at our church as a janitor. He got an occupational diploma back when they discontinued the occupational diploma a few years after he graduated. But in order to get an occupational diploma, they had to work so many hours during their junior or senior year. And so he worked his senior year. He went to school in the morning and worked in the afternoon as a janitor. And then he worked at Brookdale at Galleria Woods after that, right?
Don't remind me.
He was a dishwasher at a retirement center. He didn't like that job.
Okay.
They weren't very good to him. The management was not very good to him. And then he worked, it was just an awkward situation. It wasn't really their fault totally. But and then where'd you work? You worked for Mr. Cleans, a cleaning, did pressure washing.
Yeah.
In the dark.
It ruined my sleep schedule for sure.
Yeah.
I try waking up at like 2 a.m., 12 a.m.
Yeah. When you do pressure washing for a commercial. Yeah, because like they would go wash Jim and Nick's parking lot, and you have to do it before they open for business or before anybody gets there. Right. So they'd have to get up at 2 a.m. and be there at 3 or so or 3:30 and do pressure washing in the parking lot till sunrise.
Oh my goodness. So what's been your favorite job so far?
What's your favorite job?
I know I enjoy my sleep. I wouldn't want to wake up that time either.
I'd have to say I do have a second job, taking care of the grandparents, basically. Uber.
He's unofficially their Uber. My in-laws the same. My mother-in-law that took care of him as a nurse the one that's a nurse that took care of him when he was 3. They are now in their late 70s and don't drive. They live in Opelika and they don't drive to Birmingham anymore. And their doctors are here in Birmingham. A lot of their specialists are. Okay. So he goes and gets them and drives down to Opelika and gets them and brings them up here or either takes them back home. And so he calls that his second job because they pay him to come get him.
That is really sweet.
And normally most grandparents don't do that. But
they're really sweet to him. So
well, they did raise me. So
well, they did help raise you. That's right.
No, they did all the work. You two had to do you two did graduation school and whatnot.
No, they didn't do all the work. I promise.
Feels like they did.
So with these jobs, I feel like I've heard, were these just jobs that you knew of that had an opening and you went in and applied? Because I feel like I've heard of a place before that kind of help people with special needs get jobs. Did you go through something like that, or did you just see something and you just applied for it?
No, I just went for it.
No, that's not true. Okay. Do you remember how you got the job? What's the first step that we had to do before you get a job coach?
Oh yeah, what I like to call the "Hi, how are you" phrase. The FA's
Department of
Work
Rehabilitation Services.
That's it.
Voc Rehab, Alabama Department of Rehabilitation Services. So when he was in high school, 9th grade maybe, they have what's called a transition program. And once it's either, I think it's 9th or 10th grade, if they have an IEP, they get connected with Voc Rehab. And the Voc Rehab person often comes to the IEP meeting, or at least in our case they did. They came to the IEP meeting the last couple of years, 3 years of his high school career. And they start doing some tests and just getting to know Brent's preferences and things like that. And then upon graduation, they do full-fledged, testing and what do you like, what do you not like, what are you good at, what are you not good at, those kinds of things. And so Department of Rehab Services, then we could have just used their job coaching staff, but my husband at the time, my husband's a mental health counselor, and he worked at Triumph Services. And Triumph Services is I believe it's a nonprofit. I don't want to speak out of turn, but it's not a state agency. So they ADRS referred him to Triumph Services to get the job coaching and the job support services. So they actually meet with the client, and they may do some more assessments, or they may take whatever ADRS has done, and they help find job. They do job tries. In fact, he's went through the job trials to see things that he might like, things that he doesn't like. And then they help with applications and interviews. They go with you to the interview. And so they've helped with getting all of his jobs, except for the church job. We just talked with our preacher about that. But all of his other jobs he's gotten through ADRS, Folk Rehab, and Triumph Services.
That is so cool. I had never heard of that part. I feel like I've heard of a place called the Ark. Maybe we were at a special needs convention.
Yeah, so Triumph is similar to the Ark. Yeah, so like the Ark, you start with ADRS to get the Voc Rehab, to get the funding and the plan in place, and then ADRS can refer you to the Ark or Triumph, and there may be others as well that actually provide the services. Yeah, so the Ark is another option.
Okay. So Jane and Brent, do y'all want to talk about your relationship with Brent's birth family?
Sure. I'll start, and then I'll let Brent talk. When we adopted him, it was considered, because I knew his birth mother. I had never met his birth father, but I had met his birth mother. And it was an open adoption in that she sent pictures and updates about his siblings on usually an annual basis. I sent pictures and letters and such. Usually I did it around his birthday. I would send her a bunch of school pictures from that year, his medical, how he's doing health-wise, his school stuff. Usually around his birthday every year, and she would reciprocate. And then but she had told me that she was open to him meeting her in the family if he wanted to, down the road. So when he was around, and we always talked about his birth family. I mean, it was never, it was never a secret, never. So we had photo albums that she had sent, and we talked about who they were. And we talked about his hospital stay and who the people at the hospital were, and all of that. And so when he was about 15 or 16, he said he wanted to meet them. And so the last place I knew where she was, it was around Christmas, it was around this time of year, around Christmas time. And I sent her a Christmas card to the last address I had, not knowing for sure if it would be, if they were still here. And sure enough, she responded. I put my phone number in there and my email address. And she called me within, 3 days or so of my mailing it. And we talked on the phone like it was great. We had about a 45-minute phone call with me telling her everything. Brent was 15, 16 at the time. And then we scheduled to meet at a restaurant. So she was divorced from his biological father at that time and was married to someone else. She's still married to him. And so her husband and Brent's brother and sister met us at a restaurant in Pelham. And we all had lunch and got to know each other and exchanged phone numbers and all that. And they invited him to a pool party, I think that August, to celebrate other birthdays and his birthday. And then he invited them to his 18th birthday. And then he invited them to his graduation from high school. And then his brother, who is 3 years older than you, 2 or 3 years older than you. He has 2 children now. And when he had his first son, he invited him to come over after they came home from the hospital. And he came over, and Brent, we have a picture of Brent holding his nephew. And then when his wife was pregnant with the second one, Brent was invited to the gender reveal party, and he went, and that's when he got to meet his biological father, because he was there. He hadn't met him before.
No.
And so he and
So
Cody's
how
his
old was he?
when
How
he met
old
his
was he when
biological
you met his
father.
Yeah.
4 years ago, so 25 maybe.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was thinking when you said gender reveal. I feel like gender
Yeah,
reveals are
his bro-
fairly new.
yeah, his brother has two young children, like ages 5 and under. So, yeah, so for the first one, the first child, Brent met the child when he came out from the hospital. For the second one, they invited him to the gender reveal party. And so it was, I don't know, how old's Phoenix? Maybe 3, 4. It's probably 4 years
2,
ago.
3, 4,
Yeah.
somewhere around there. Yeah.
He was born, yeah. Yeah. So he and Cody, his brother, has his Brent's name tattooed on his shoulder, on his back. So,
Aww.
And his sister carries his picture in her wallet. So it's good, and
That's
they've gotten together a few times. Cody brought Samantha over to Hoover to the Party City several years ago to shop for a Halloween costume, and Brent met him over there and helped her shop for a Halloween costume. And he texts with her or with his brother, and he messages and texts with his birth mother, and she and I have contact. And we had a story done in the Shelby Living magazine. I brought it to show. It's probably still available on their website on the just if you went to the
I'll
Shelby
be sure
Living.
to put the link.
Yeah,
I'll put the link
I
in the
sent you
comments
the link,
too.
right? There's a picture of
I've
his
got it.
biological family.
Oh, keep going. I gotta take this.
Can you see
Yeah, some
this?
sweet picture.
Who is it? Oh, okay. Can you see the picture? That's his.
Yes, I can now.
That's his biological family.
Yes, so sweet. Yeah,
So
and I'll
he
post
had
the link to that whole article too.
he had to take a phone call. Speaking of Triumph Services, somebody just called him who's been trying to communicate with him, so he had to step away for a minute.
Okay.
Hey, Brent, go in the other room so
Well,
we can hear you.
oh,
Okay.
he can't be any louder than my 2-year-old who keeps walking around asking for a candy cane. So, what makes you most proud of Brent? He's so funny, by the way.
He is. He's a good guy. I keep saying a kid, but he's almost 30. I gotta quit saying he's a kid.
He's your kid. He'll always be your kid.
He'll always be my kid. That's what I told him. Oh my gosh, everything. I mean, just we just didn't know what his potential was when we adopted him, and he has just risen above and beyond what we expected. I mean, he can drive, he can work, he can live on his own. He still depends on us for helping with financial, bills and keeping track of things like, making appointments with, like, the Triumph services, or he needs support. He still needs support from us, but he can do day-to-day living by himself, and I'm very proud of that. He cooks. He sends me pictures of things he's cooked on his stove or on his George Foreman grill, and I'm just proud of everything. He's got a really loving, caring, giving heart. He cares about animals and people and children, and he's just a good. Really, I'm just really proud of him. So
That's so sweet. I've got some more questions for him, but
okay.
well, after high school, so he was accepted into the Emerging Young Leaders program, right? Can you tell us like what that is?
Yeah, I don't know if they do it anymore. I don't know. It was I think it was a grant funded thing through People First. And People First is a nonprofit organization for adults with intellectual disabilities to help become self advocates. And so the Emerging Young Leaders was a grant funded project that worked with young adults with intellectual disabilities to help them be more confident, help them with some public speaking skills, and learning how to advocate for themselves and others with disabilities. And so, sorry, did I?
Mom, you need to learn your left and rights. Anyway, what did I miss?
She was asking about emerging young leaders. And then she also asked me what I was proud of about you. And I told her everything. But let me finish telling about this. Then
Go for it.
And so he after he graduated from that Emerging Young Leaders program, he became a member of People First, and he got to do some presentations to high schools, like other special ed students in high school, helping them to understand what life can be like for an adult with intellectual disabilities after high school, or it may be any disabilities, not just intellectual. And then he got to speak at the Alabama Disabilities Conference as a panel speaker. And so he hasn't participated in that in a long time. I think he kind of got burnt out on it, but they loved him and they wish he'd come back. They said that he's really, really good in that role. So I hope he'll go back to it sometime.
How long did you do it?
Do you remember how long you did it?
How long did you do it, Brent?
About a year, 2 years, somewhere around there. 2, 3 years.
Okay.
Yeah. He was probably 20 or 21, 22 when he started. I think he did it about 3 or 4 years, maybe.
Okay.
It's been a long time.
Did you enjoy it, or
he stopped it? I think he stopped around 25 when he was around 25.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Did you enjoy it when you were doing it?
To some degree, yeah.
So, Brent, what are some accomplishments that you're most proud of? Because it sounds like you've accomplished a lot.
I think I've accomplished enough for one lifetime. Swing it over to somebody else who wants the last pages of it.
What are you proud of yourself for doing?
That you and I were able to settle our differences when I was a teenager.
Yeah,
we did not. We pretty much for like.
We had a little rough patch when he was in his teens, but not horrible.
Yeah,
no worse than any other mom and teenager.
Right. Yeah, that's something I guess I'm looking forward to, I guess.
Yeah.
So what about
what are you proud of? You were proud of getting a black belt in Taekwondo. What else are you proud of?
Knowing that I can take care of animals, basically.
What about being able to be on your own?
So.
And you attended the hospitality and culinary program, right? And your mom says you like to cook. What's your favorite thing to cook?
Pretty much anything that's in the microwave.
Gotcha.
The less of a mess, the better.
Hey, recently
Sure.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Stir fry's good. No, I was just gonna say, I'm not like huge on microwavable stuff, but just recently I've been stuck on some microwavable chicken and cheese taquitos. They're so
there you go.
Oh, he loves
those. There you go.
He loves those.
There you go.
Yes. Sometimes if I'm feeling fancy, I'll dip them in salsa, but recently I've been just eating them by the tip.
They're good.
They are good. So, as we come to a close today, Jane, do you have any advice for parents with newly diagnosed children?
Sure. Take it easy on them and don't rush it.
I think she said Jane.
I don't care. I don't care.
Okay, that was good advice too.
Okay.
Take it easy.
Take it easy on them and don't rush them. Okay, that's enough.
Love you.
I love you too.
Sweet.
I think, find your community, find supports and resources. I was fortunate. We were fortunate that my husband and I both worked in fields that helped us already be connected to supports for disabilities. But there are supports out there in your community, and Google is awesome. We didn't have Google in 1995 when we adopted Brent. So, finding where your supports are, I think this, alabamacare.org is a great organization to be a great go-to place. But your doctor can help you find resources. I think that it's important for parents of children with special needs, specifically young children, to find a balance that's comfortable for you and your partner and your extended family on discipline. And because even children with special needs need discipline, and it is hard. And
yes, we do sometimes.
And
life.
I think there's a tendency for some parents to want to take it easy on the child because they have special needs, but that's doing a dishonor to the child if you don't teach them to obey rules and know what your child's abilities are to understand the rules, of course, and and those kinds of things. But that again goes back to where community comes in, is seeking other parents' input and just that kind of thing. So
that's a really good point. That's a really good point.
Yeah. And make sure you marry somebody that's a therapist that knows how to simmer you out.
You don't have to marry somebody that's a therapist, but Brent, because his dad is a therapist, he says, "Yeah, Dad knows how to handle me when I need to."
When I have an exploding
That's
system.
so funny. That probably is pretty nice.
It is helpful. Yeah, it was funny because I'm an early childhood special educator by training. So I told Chuck when we adopted Brent, well, actually when we were just talking about adopting or having a child, I said, okay, I'll raise them until they're about 6 or 7, and then they're yours, because early childhood ends at a certain age. I don't know anything about teens or adults, so you'll be responsible after they're 6. Of course, it doesn't work that way, but I was fortunate that I had a husband that did understand behavior and mental health and that kind of thing. But I think we've done pretty good. He's turned out good despite some of our mistakes. So.
Which you made plenty.
Sure we did.
You seem very well-rounded, Brent. So is there anything that we haven't talked about that you think a member of the community would benefit from hearing?
Well, what else do you think you may have left off?
So she's asking us.
I think I think we talked about a lot.
Okay, then.
I think we did good.
Wait, she gets to tell us when we're done.
Oh.
That's so funny. Well, you were close. You were close, because I think we've covered it. I'm so happy I got to meet you, Brent, and it was so good to see you again, Jane.
Same here, Hannah. Thank you for being willing to postpone. I was not in an interview mindset last week. I just come down with it turned out to just be the common cold, but it got me hard.
Oh, it was no problem. It actually kind of worked out because I wasn't feeling my best either, so it's okay.
Good.
It hit me hard a couple of weeks ago too.
It was great to see you, Hannah. Thank you so much.
Far better. All right,
I'll talk to you
later. Bye.
Bye-bye.